It was the coldest Christmas Eve I could remember. Snow blanketed everything around, turning the forest surrounding our cabin into a white and desolate wasteland. The air was biting, sharp enough to burn the lungs with every breath. But inside the mansion, warmth prevailed. The fireplace crackled, casting an orange glow across the room, as laughter echoed while friends and neighbors filled the house with stories, songs, and joy. Our family had always been at the center of Christmas celebrations in the small town of Gray Hollow. My great-grandparents built this mansion decades ago, and it became a tradition to host all the major parties of the year: birthdays, Thanksgiving, Halloween, and of course, Christmas. Christmas in our family, the Hargrooves family, was always the biggest celebration of the year, surpassing all the others combined in every aspect: food, drink, and joy. We were always the richest family in town, and also the most loved. We never charged a penny or asked for even a glass of water to hold these celebrations. We simply loved hosting parties for the town. Even though we never charged anything, many people in town insisted on bringing their best dishes or staying late to help clean up. It had always been a very united community. And when Christmas came around, everyone eagerly awaited the biggest party in Gray Hollow. This year was no different. The mansion was packed with people, the air heavy with the smell of roasted turkey, hot cider, and fresh pine. My father, Thomas, was the center of attention, as always. An imposing man with a booming voice yet indescribable kindness, beloved by all the children. He presided near the fireplace, entertaining everyone with stories of his hunting adventures. Telling these stories to the children was a tradition. They hung on to his every word, their eyes gleaming with admiration. As the evening went on, I withdrew to a corner with a mug of cider, content to watch the party unfold. There was something magical about these gatherings, a sense of timelessness, as generations mingled and celebrated together. However, this year, I couldn't shake a strange feeling of unease. It was as if something sinister lurked among the festivities, something waiting in the shadows, biding its time. The snowstorm outside grew stronger, and the wind howled like a living thing, rattling the windows. Or perhaps it was the unsettling silence beneath the joy, like a shadow you couldn't see but could always feel. The first sign that something was wrong came from the dogs. Our family had 3 experienced hunting dogs that rarely made a fuss without reason. But that night, they erupted in barking, their howls cutting through the cheerful noise inside the cabin. All heads turned toward the door, and a hush fell over the room. My father was the first to stand, his face tightening with concern. "Stay here," he ordered. But before he could grab his coat, a woman let out a scream. It was piercing, unmistakable, as she came running toward us in panic, shouting, "There's something out there." Of course, we all grew apprehensive. "Something? What do you mean?" my father asked. "It was a wolf, but huge, completely black, with glowing red eyes," said Amanda. We all exchanged frightened and confused glances. "A wolf?" my father choked out. "Yes, a wolf, but enormous, almost like a tiger or a lion." And then another scream came, accompanied by a cold gust of wind that echoed through the room. "Charlie is missing," shouted Amanda, one of our family's maids. Little Charlie was about 7 years old. He belonged to the Merritt family, one of the oldest families in town. He was a very polite and curious boy, probably one of the most beloved in the entire community. "Charlie went outside?" "What do you mean?" my father asked desperately. "Yes, we were all in the room when suddenly he wasn't there anymore. I've searched the whole room, and there's no way he could have gone into another part of the house since the doors are locked." She was right. We always kept all other rooms locked to avoid any inconvenience. The celebrations took place only in the main hall. That's when we felt the cold wind and saw the fireplace extinguish. The door was wide open. Our hearts froze. Charlie had simply walked out of the house, and now he was out there with whatever that creature was. 5 minutes passed. 10, then 15. Unease spread like an epidemic among the guests, and whispers began to circulate. My father stood by the window, staring at the storm with a clenched jaw. "He's taken too long," he murmured to himself. Another 5 minutes passed before my father broke the silence. "I'm going to see what's going on," he said. his voice firm but anxious. He was trying so hard to sound brave. My father hesitated, but finally summoned the courage. "I'll be right back," he said as he donned his coat and boots. "Jones, stay here and look after the guests while I am coming too," I interrupted, grabbing my coat. My father knew it would be pointless to argue. Besides, it was obvious that more people would be better. Several of our neighbors also volunteered to join us. We all prepared with flashlights and rifles and set out to search for Charlie. As soon as we stepped outside, we could hear Charlie's screams, but we couldn't see him. The storm made it impossible to see a foot in front of us. Along with Charlie's screams, we could hear the creature. It was deep and guttural, like a growl, but distorted, as if the animal had two throats. We could see its glowing eyes in the distance. My father didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired with a deafening bang, shouting for me to follow him. I grabbed the flashlight and stumbled after him through the snowstorm. The cold hit me like a wall, the wind nearly stealing my breath as we pressed on toward the kennels where the dogs were kept. Their barking had ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence. The snow muffled everything, and the darkness was oppressive, as if the night itself were alive and watching us. We found the dogs cowering in their pen, trembling and whining, their tails tucked between their legs. Something had terrified them, but there was no sign of Charlie. We followed his footprints, the only clear trail in the freshly fallen snow. They led away from the cabin, down the hill to the edge of the forest. But then, inexplicably, they stopped. There were no signs of a struggle, no other tracks suggesting he had returned or been dragged away, not even a drop of blood. The footprints simply ended, as if he had vanished into thin air. My father called his name, his voice hoarse and frantic. I joined him, and eventually the other neighbors did too, all shouting until our throats burned. But there was no response. Only the wind answered, carrying with it a distant echo of Charlie's scream. My stomach churned as I realized the sound wasn't coming from the forest or the hills. It was coming from above. I looked up, and for a moment, I thought I saw something. A shadow against the storm clouds, vast and impossible, like wings spread wide in the sky. But then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness. My father must have seen it too, because his face went pale, and he gripped his rifle as if it were the only thing tethering him to reality. We searched for hours, scouring every inch of the forest and the fields around us. We formed search parties with flashlights and torches. The storm painted a surreal scene. Trees bowed under the weight of snow, shadows playing tricks on our eyes. Once or twice, we thought we heard distant screams, but they always led to dead ends. Mrs. Merritt, Charlie's mother, swore she saw something strange near the old creek. A mark in the snow that didn't resemble any known animal. It was too large, too deep, almost as if a claw had pressed into the ground. But before we could investigate further, the storm picked up again, erasing all traces. By dawn, the storm had subsided, leaving the world eerily quiet and still. But Charlie was gone. No footprints, no signs of a struggle, nothing. For weeks, we searched. Posters were put up, rewards were offered, but there were no answers, only whispers and rumors. Some said he had run away. Others claimed he had fallen prey to a wild animal. But deep down, I knew the truth was far stranger and far darker. Something had taken him that night, something that defies explanation. My family, the Hargrooves, is very rich and prosperous. We always have the money to fund all the celebrations and continue bringing joy to the town, even though someone disappears every year. It's the least we can do for these poor souls, since the creature my great-grandparents summoned to grant our family eternal prosperity gets hungry every year. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. And Merry Christmas.